So this is my series of film title translations. Comment below if you want to see more content like this or if you know an interesting film title translation. I'm Canadian, so all of our labels, including films, have a French and English title, and sometimes there's a discrepancy between what the title says and what it means, or in some cases it was giving away the entire plot to the movie. So here's a look at some Spanish films, Japanese, there's Italian, Polish, obviously French as well. I think my favorites that I found from the series were Army of Dead translation and the Terminator film translation. So funny and just an interesting new way to look at those films. You can also check out the reaction video to Terminator on my channel as well. But thank you so much for watching. Comment below if you want to see more content like this. And as always, please like, comment, and subscribe to this channel and check back often for more awesome content. So continuing my series of translating film titles, today we're going to be looking at some Swedish films. There is a TikToker on here that I follow who always translates and compares the Nordic languages. So if you're watching and you have some interesting titles, please let me know in the comments. I would love to check them out. The comedy classic Airplane translates to "Look, we're flying," which again, I feel like is a perfectly fitting title because this movie is so on the nose. There's so many literal jokes. I think would have been a hilarious alternative title. Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back in Swedish translates to "Stars Without Brains," which seems very harsh, and I don't know if that's the effect they were going for. The dark comedy Heathers, starring Christian Slater and Winona Ryder in Swedish, apparently translates to "Witches, Homework, and Deadly Class," which again sounds very intense, as opposed to just a Heathers. Ace Ventura, Pet Detective in Swedish translates to "The Galloping Detective." And the Ryan Gosling, Rachel McAdams romance film The Notebook translates to "The Journal. I was looking for you and found my heart." Which is accurate. He does reference The Notebook, obviously, but I feel like The Notebook is more effective and doesn't need the lengthy explanation. So continuing my series of movie titles translated in different languages, today we're going to look at some German film translations. So Die Hard in German means die slowly, which just sounds horrible. Dodgeball apparently translates to full of nuts, which I find is a hilarious title. I love this movie. National Lampoon's Vacation apparently translates to "The Shrill Four on the Move," which is accurate. That is a very accurate description. And a movie that I watched fairly recently, you can check out the reaction video on my YouTube channel, is Airplane. In German, it translates to "The Unbelievable Trip in a Wacky Airplane," which I feel like if they would have thought of that title, they would have went with it because it is so funny and so accurate. And if you've seen this movie, you know it is full of literal jokes and puns and everything like that. So I find that a perfectly fitting title. So this is French translations of movie titles. I'm Canadian. Canada is a bilingual country, so all of our items have the English and French label on them. So today we're going to look at some animated movies. So the Tim Burton classic animated movie translates to "Mr. Jack's Strange Christmas," which again is accurate. It's just an interesting way to put it. The Disney film Rescuers Down Under translates to "Bernard and Bianca in the Land of Kangaroos." One of my favorite movies growing up, The Land Before Time, just translates into Littlefoot the Dinosaur, which is just the character's name. I loved Don Bluth movies as a kid. This one was one of my favorites, even though it was heartbreaking. But All Dogs Go to Heaven translates to Charlie, My Hero. And lastly, the Disney movie The Fox and the Hound translates to This, which I guess are the French names for Todd and Copper. Comment below if you want to see more content like this. Continuing my series of film title translations, today we will be looking at some films in Japanese. The Fate and the Furious, part of the Fast and the Furious franchise, in Japanese translates to Wild Speed Icebreak. I haven't seen this one, but according to this poster, it looks like a very accurate description. I think this might be one of my favorite titles that I've come across so far. The Japanese title for Anchorman 2 translates to We Are Newscasters, History's Lowest Viewership Battle in New York. Again, accurate and overly descriptive. Hot Tub Time Machine translates to Go! With all those exclamation points, with bath. Again, baths are different than hot tubs, but I get what they're going for. And the James Bond Roger Moore film Live and Let Die translates to they are the ones who will die. It's like, you're gonna die. Like, what are you talking about? It can't be me. So very interesting twist on the words there. This is part 2 of my film title translations in Japanese. The Wes Anderson coming-of-age classic film Rushmore translates to the world of Max the Genius, which I feel like is how he would describe himself. The 80s horror classic The Evil Dead translates to The Ghost's Intestines, which is very accurate, very disturbing film. There's a lot of graphic scenes, and especially this cover for this poster, very graphic. The Japanese translation for the 80s classic Ferris Bueller's Day Off translates to one morning Ferris suddenly ... which I guess is accurate. He did just decide this one day, but I also feel like his character would do this again. I watched this movie constantly when it came out. I still quote it today. So funny. Napoleon Dynamite just translates to busman, which I'm pretty sure he only rode the bus in the opening scene. Like, I don't think the bus played that big of a part in the entire movie. Despicable Me 3, which I haven't seen, but I know the characters in Japanese translates to Phantom Thief Gru and the Minion Great Escape, which just sounds fun. That sounds way more fun than just Despicable Me 3. Continuing my film title translation series, this is part 3 of Japanese titles. I know I said in a previous video that the Anchorman 2 Japanese translation was my favorite. Scratch that completely. I've changed my mind. My favorite is the Army of Darkness translation in Japanese, which is Captain Supermarket. He's standing in Campbell's soup cans. So good. Such a fun poster. I'm obsessed with this. Great translation. The film Cyrus translates to My Important Person and Her Shitty Son. I do remember watching this when it first came out, and I definitely feel like that's an accurate description. Harsh, but accurate. American Reunion, part of the American Pie series, translates to American Pie, Pie, Pie. I guess they just really wanted to emphasize that Pie will be involved and that Pie will be playing a pivotal role in this film by repeating it 3 times. I love She's the Man. I quote it to this day. I've watched it too many times. Translates in Japanese to American Peach Pie. I don't know what that means. I'm not sure I want to know what that means or what that's in reference to. And lastly, I Love You Man translates to 40-year-old man's Virgin Road. Welcome to another edition of French translations from movie posters. I'm Canadian, and in Canada everything has a French and English label, as Canada is a bilingual country. The 90s action movie Speed, starring Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock, translates to Full Speed Ahead. You can kind of see it in the small text underneath Speed, and it has a similar title for Speed 2. The James Dean classic Rebel Without a Cause becomes The Anger of Life. The Bret Easton Ellis adaptation Less Than Zero becomes Snow Over Beverly Hills, and I don't think they mean the weather. I've noticed a lot of the French titles are very literal, and I feel like that's perfectly summarized in Home Alone, which translates to Mom, I've Missed the Plane. And lastly, the Gregory Peck classic To Kill a Mockingbird translates to Of Silence and Shadows, which I feel like is a fitting title as well. I mean, To Kill a Mockingbird is great, but if there had to be a second title, I feel like that's very fitting. So this is part 2 of translating French-Canadian movie titles. Canada is bilingual, so everything has a French and English label on it, and this is part 2 with horror movies. So the horror classic Evil Dead translates to The Opera of Terror, which is very fitting. If you've seen this movie, you know it is terrifying. The 70s horror film Black Christmas, which I believe was also filmed in Canada, translates to Tragic Christmas, which again is a very literal title. I could only find the poster for Fright Night 2, but Fright Night, the 80s horror movie, translates to vampire. Did you say vampire? Which, again, makes sense for the movie. Obviously, it is about vampires, but having a question for a title I thought was interesting. And the Vincent Price classic House on Haunted Hill translates to The Night of All Mysteries, which, if you've seen this movie, you know there's definitely some twists, and I can imagine if you'd seen this when it first came out, there would have been a lot of mystery, a lot of suspense. So yeah, I thought that was an interesting title choice as well. And comment below if you want to see more content like this. So this is French Translations to Horror Movies Part 3. I'm Canadian. In Canada, everything has a French and English label. So let's take a look at some horror movies and see how they translate. Definitely one of the scariest movies I've watched for the channel. It haunts my dreams to this day. Hellraiser translates to The Pact, which definitely doesn't have the terrifying effect that a title of Hellraiser does. The horror sci-fi classic of Alien is still obviously Alien, but the subtitle is The Eighth Passenger, which I thought was interesting. The Steven Spielberg summer horror classic of Jaws becomes The Teeth of the Sea, which again is very literal and I don't think has the same effect as Jaws. It sounds like maybe there's a sea full of teeth. The John Carpenter horror classic, The Thing, definitely one of my favorite horror movies that I've watched recently. The top line translates to the End of Terror. The Thing is obviously still the same, and then the subtitle translates to 12 Men of Prey, A Choice, if I'm translating that correctly. I also read some versions that were called The Dreadful Thing, which all sound terrifying. I do love the title of The Thing. Obviously, it's very ominous, and if you've seen this movie, you understand why that would be terrifying. So this is part 4 of translating French movie titles. I'm Canadian. Canada is bilingual, so everything has an English and a French label. So let's check out some more horror movies. Starting off with Poltergeist, terrifying, definitely one of the scariest movies I've seen in a long time. That pool scene, if you know, you know. The subtext here translates to "they're here," which is obviously a very famous line from the movie. "They want revenge" is the next line, and then the third one is "they know how." I did see a few posters that also said "the revenge of the ghosts," which again is obviously a very literal, accurate title. The Vincent Price classic House of Wax translates to "the man in the wax mask." Try saying that 5 times fast, but I feel like that kind of just gives away the whole movie, which is definitely a spoiler. So yeah, I definitely think House of Wax is a better title. They Live, one of my favorite movies that I've seen recently, so good, translates to Invasion Los Angeles. The Clive Barker horror film Nightbreed translates to Cabal, which is a character name, and comment below if you want to see more content like this. So continuing my series on film title translations, The Shawshank Redemption in Finnish apparently translates to Rita Hayworth Key to Escape, which is a huge spoiler. That gives away the entire movie, basically. The Matrix was suggested in the comments, so thank you for the suggestion. I found the French poster, which translates to Believe in the Incredible. Apparently there's a version that translates to The Young People Who Traverse Dimensions While Wearing Sunglasses, which I think is amazing. All these like really long, drawn-out titles that are super descriptive just make me so happy. I haven't seen Mel Brooks's version of The Producers, but apparently in Italian, the title translates to "Please do not touch the old women." I don't know why they were touching them in the first place, but that's a very interesting approach to the title. Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind, one of my favorite movies. In Italian, apparently it translates to "If you leave, I'll delete you," or "If you leave, I'll erase you," which, if you've seen the movie, is an accurate description, but such a harsh way of putting it. And a movie that I've watched fairly recently and really loved, Terminator. You can check out the reaction video to that movie on my YouTube channel as well. In Polish, it translates to Electronic Assassin, which I think is a great title and very accurate. So continuing my series of film title translations, today we're going to look at some Spanish films. Weekend at Bernie's translates to "The Dead Guy is Very Much Alive," or "Weekend with the Dead Guy," which is very accurate, a very literal title. If you've seen this movie, that basically describes the whole plot. I love Groundhog Day, so funny. Bill Murray is great. Apparently in Spanish it means "spell of time," which is accurate but sounds a lot more sinister. Hereditary, the director who did Midsommar, and he's got a new film coming out soon, I believe, as well. Just always so intense and so creepy, and Hereditary was no different. In Spanish, it means Devil's Legacy. 80s classic Ferris Bueller's Day Off in Spanish means an expert in amusements, which is, I feel like if Ferris had to give himself a profession or a title, that's what he would claim. One of my all-time favorite movies, Dumb and Dumber, in Spanish translates to A Couple of Idiots. So continuing my series of film translations, this is Spanish film titles part 2. The Stanley Kubrick film Dr. Strangelove or How I Stopped Worrying and Love the Bomb translates to Red Telephone, We Flight to Moscow. The 90s Keanu Reeves, Patrick Swayze film Point Break translates in Spanish to They Call Him Bodhi, which is just the character's name. I remember watching Rat Race so many times when it came out. I thought it was hilarious. In Brazil, Rat Race translates to Everybody's Crazy, a race for millions of dollars. And lastly, the Audrey Hepburn classic Breakfast at Tiffany's in Spanish translates to Fancy Little Doll. So continuing my series of film title translations, this is Spanish Films Part 3. I love Robin Williams. Mrs. Doubtfire is so funny. One of my favorite movies of his. In Spanish, it translates to Dad Forever or Always Dad. The Spanish title for Home Alone translates to My Poor Little Angel, which I don't feel like is accurate at all. Kevin McAllister was having the time of his life. In Spanish, Grease, the classic with John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John, translates to Vaseline, which for me just does not have the same effect. And the classic film Sound of Music translates in Spanish to Smiles and Tears, which sounds more like an after-school special film than it does an iconic musical number. If you want to see more content like this, let me know in the comments, or if you've come across a funny translation, let me know, and be sure to check out my YouTube channel for movie reviews and reaction videos.